Terry Hintz. He's a ray of sunshine that cuts through the dreary bleakness of the world of Lisa, bringing a smile to those around him and assisting those in need with a series of helpful guides he leaves throughout the land. However, suffering hangs heavy on every facet of Olathe, from its landscape to its denizens, and even Terry himself. The pain he went through forces him to go on a journey where he finds the thing he needed to begin to heal, but unfortunately, that very thing eventually leads to his doom. What follows here is Terry's story from its beginning to its end. It all starts in a small, isolated valley in eastern Olathe. Here, the denizens of a small community, secluded from the brutality of the rest of the world, lived in peace. One of its citizens was a flamboyant man named Terry Hintz, who, in a desire to help others, left hint posters across town that helped guide people through their lives. This earned him the nickname the Lord of the Tutorial, and everyone in the town came to adore him. So much so that they made him the overlord of their small village. They gave him a mattress throne at the end of their community and painted a large, extravagant mural in his likeness. They named their village the Land of Hints, and with the devout admiration of his fandom, Terry guided the community to a prosperity that could almost rival the village of Mr. Beautiful. There was one thing that differentiated the two, however. The Land of Hints was a fake. The fabricated community was created by Terry Hintz. He was never a powerful man that was adored by others. He was simply a weakling that lived alone in that valley in eastern Olathe to hide himself away from the cruelty of the world. However, the seclusion that offered him protection from bodily harm also created mental strain for him, as he had no human interaction to quell his loneliness, nor an outlet to improve his self-esteem. So, in order to comfort himself, he crafted an entire world that painted him as someone he wasn't. He created the Hint Lord persona, the town's protector and overlord, one that was loved by the denizens of the town. Denizens that were simply scarecrows that Terry constructed. The trick worked, for a time, and he began to believe his own delusion, believing himself to be an important savior to these people. But the simulated human interaction could never replace the feelings of actual companionship, and eventually, the loneliness he felt within him plunged him into a deep depression. So deep, he began to feel lost. But he knew what he needed, so he brought up what courage he had and left behind the secluded safety of the Land of Hints in search of a real friend. His journey seemed fruitless at first, and he was eventually forced to clamber to a dead tree to flee from a monstrous terror. A small, stray dog. He remained trapped until a chance encounter changed his life forever. A balding, bearded man named Brad appeared, and Terry asked him to take care of the dog for him. Not wanting to seem weak, he gave the excuse that he couldn't do it himself because he pulled his groin. Brad took care of Cheeselegs with ease, and Terry climbed down from the tree, excited to talk to a real person, where he introduced himself to Brad. Still wrapped in his delusion, he explained his Hint Lord persona to Brad, bragging about how big of a deal he was with all of his fans. Fans that called him the Lord of the Tutorial, and expected it to impress Brad. But Brad turned to leave. Terry called after him. Not wanting to be alone again, but needing an excuse to travel with Brad, he projected his loneliness onto him, and offered to join him to keep him company out of the goodness of his heart. Brad didn't say anything, which Terry took as a yes, and Terry joined Brad, the first companion he had had in who knows how long. The two shared a silent trek back together to Brad's hut, where they found a friend of Brad's dying. Brad mourned his death for a moment, then tried to get rid of Terry by telling him he needs to go on alone. But Terry, posing as heartstruck by the tragedy of Brad's story, pulls what he did earlier, and this time projected his weakness onto Brad. And despite Brad's denial, reluctantly offers to join him, boasting that he's a very powerful warrior, and accompanied him on his quest to find that someone. It wasn't very far into their journey that they came upon their first battle, and Terry had a chance to show off his might. He ran forth, tripped, and weakly slid into their attacker, doing very little, if any, damage, displaying his true weakness to Brad, and showing that he needed Brad to protect him more than he could protect Brad. Despite this weakness though, Brad didn't abandon Terry, and the two, Brad, fought their way through a few more men until they got hit by a truck which knocked the duo unconscious. Brad was the first to come to, and he woke to his childhood bully, Christopher Colombo, along with his gents looming over him, and they gave Brad a choice. Brad could either relinquish all of his items to save the life of Terry, or rid himself of the cumbersome Terry to keep the trinkets he's found on his journey thus far. The decision Brad made here changed the unconscious man's life forever. If Brad chose to forsake Terry, Colombo and the gents carried off the unconscious man, who was devastated by the choice of the man he thought was his best friend when he came to, and he made a vow to get back at the man that betrayed him. He began training, biding his time, preparing himself for the day when he could exact his revenge. When he finally came face to face with the man, he shared his disdain for him, revealing how much his betrayal hurt him. He told him he's a new man now, with new friends, and was revealed as Terrible Terry, the Lord of Hurts. Terry told Brad it was time for him to die, and a fight broke out. Terry showed his words weren't hollow. His strength had grown massively, and he put up a fierce fight. However, whereas Terry fought alone, Brad fought with the companions he gained in his quest, and the power of their combined strength was enough to overcome the former friend, and Terry died to the hands of the man that could have been his best friend. However, if Brad made the opposite choice to spare Terry, the path of Terry's life altered dramatically. After Brad told Terry what happened when he came to, Terry considered all that's happened to him since he met Brad and called him a bad omen. But a change seemed to come over him. Instead of boasting about himself or giving out an exaggerated lie, he told Brad he didn't mind the bad luck because he liked hanging out with him, and joined him so the two could continue on their journey together. And as they did so, something began to change within Terry. As the duo go on, Terry faced many dangers. His life could be threatened by a psychopath intent on torturing Brad. He may have been forced to play Russian roulette for the enjoyment of strangers, and there were many other scenarios in which he had to fight for survival. Yet through it all, he came out alive, thanks to his buddy Brad. These hardships prompted growth in Terry, and he learned new skills which he could use in battle, all of which reflected a part of his personality. His extravagance reflected in the explosions that were thrown up from the force of his knuckle drops. His Hintlord persona reflected in the abilities he could use to assist his allies, and his false bravado reflected in his ability to strike a pose that made him feel really cool when he really wasn't. Initially, these abilities were weak, and other companions could perform the functions at a higher level than Terry could. But as he got more experience and his skills were honed, he gained abilities that put him on the same level or even surpass his peers. Abilities like a sailing knuckle drop that sent enemies straight to hell, or a fabulous dance that caused enemies to erupt in flames. This newfound strength changed Terry from a weak loser that depended on protection from others to a man strong enough to stand on his own 2 feet. A change Terry attributed directly to his journey with Brad. But most important of all, as they continued traveling together, the feeling of companionship he felt with Brad grew and grew, and he began to consider Brad as his best friend. And Terry's immense loneliness vanished as he finally found what he was looking for when he set out from his isolated home: a real friend. He was fiercely loyal to Brad, never abandoned him during his quest to find Buddy, and helped him through all the trials and tribulations he faced to the end. Or, well, he would have, if not for Brad's descent into madness prompted by his joy addiction. Terry had been through every step of Brad's journey, and as he watched Brad grievously beat and kill friends from his past while he chased after Buddy for his own selfish desires, doubt began to manifest within Terry. One day, after the group obtained components to build a boat to chase after Buddy, they woke up and found Brad, along with Shardy and the boat, was nowhere to be found. Brad's paranoia eventually forced him to leave behind not only Terry, but all of his friends to the harshness of Olathe. Terry was abandoned by his best friend, mirroring the decision that could have been made earlier in the game. But this time, he didn't hold contempt for Brad in his heart. Instead, another feeling emerged within him. Having seen what Brad was willing to destroy to get his daughter back, Terry knew he needed to be stopped. Empowered with the growth he'd experienced during his journey, combined with the companionship of those he met along the way, Terry determined to chase after Brad and stop him. Terry and the others eventually found Brad in Randoland at his most desperate moment yet, the moment in which he needed his friends now more than ever. But Terry, resolute, wasn't going to help him. Before trying to stop him, he shared some emotional words for his friend.
Brad, I've been a loser my whole life. Hanging around you has made me feel strong for once. Like a man. The first day that we ever met was the best day of my life. Even before the world changed. Maybe you don't feel the same way, but you're my best friend, dude. It's just this... Brad, this is our future you're messing with. I'm sorry. We can't let you do this.
These were Terry's final words. The emotion of fighting the man that changed so much in him. The man that made him a better person. The man that taught him the true joy of having a real friend was too much for Terry. And although he had grown more powerful, he couldn't find the strength to attack his best friend. A friend that killed him there in Randoland, feeling nothing as he did so, due to the numbing effect of the joy drug. Terry started as a severely depressed man, driven by the solitary loneliness of his existence to wander the wastelands of Olathe in search of a real friend, and he found one in Brad. This friendship, no matter how brief, changed Terry. He came to learn what true companionship is, quashing his loneliness, and he found true joy. However, no matter his path, his fate had an ironic end. He was killed at the hands of the person that changed so much for him, his best friend. And that's Terry's story. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and if you have any questions or comments or anything, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to hear from you. But that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and see you later.